Thanks for being here. This is a great experience for you, and then welcome our great panel of experts, and thank you for everything.
Okay, so like I said, we're going to be informal, so we're going to start. Each panelist is going to introduce themselves, talk about their careers, and I'm just going for it. So Jimmy is first.
I've been with Boeing for 15 years. I actually started my career as a business analyst with them. My undergrad from Cal State Long Beach is in business finance. I'm actually currently pursuing my MBA with the Syracuse online MBA program, and about 2 more classes away from finishing that. One of the great things of actually working for a company like Boeing is they pay 100% of your tuition. So definitely wanted to take advantage of that. I will say that from my perspective, I looked over some of the questions, but one of the things that I've been sort of doing a lot of mentoring and talking to some of the younger career folks at Boeing about is understanding the importance of project management in pretty much anything that you do. I feel like that's a skill set that you can use in whatever you set out to make your career about. Project management is, there's a lot of books out there, there's a lot of different techniques, but at the end of the day, it's about understanding what the requirements are for the job that you're managing, being able to track and manage that job so that you can get ahead of issues, get ahead of risks, and just try to execute the most efficient, effective way possible. As a business analyst, I work with a lot of project managers as their sort of business counterpart and trying to give them data that they could use to make decisions. And I quickly found that the more I thought like them as a project manager, the more effective I was in supporting them, right? And so I kind of see that as a skill set that you can use in any field. Now I'm currently in project management, and it's interesting for me to kind of look back and think of what I was telling myself about being a project manager, having a project management mindset, because I find myself like not always doing that in my current career. So it's easy to get sidetracked, but it's a discipline. The more you can put those disciplines in place to help you manage your projects, the better off you're going to be. So I wanted to kind of go down that path because I feel like some people think, well, what should I do to be a good employee? What should I do to, once you are an employee, what can I do to be better for my company? And I think those are skill sets that underlying whatever you're doing, you can transfer them to any kind of industry. So, I'm an aerospace, it's a large engineering company, but if I just stuck with the business rules that we did in aerospace, they don't really transfer to other industries. Right? We did stuff like looking at metrics that only the government really cares about, and so being able to then hone in on those project management skills, it was like, okay, this is something that I can transfer out. And eventually I got into more so like mainstream financial type stuff, like financial planning and stuff like that, and then that's a little more transferable. But I think project management is a skill set that you guys can really use in any type of venture. So that's my 2 cents for now, and then as things come up,
Thank you, everyone. My name is Gerry Feeney. I'm with the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce. I've been with the Chamber for about 6 months now, so I'm fairly new in my role. I recently transitioned to the Chamber from DHL Global Forwarding, so I was actually here last year. I had the pleasure of meeting Katya when I took my team on a tour at the port of Los Angeles. It was a really good boat tour. You get to see world trade and supply chain in action. So I just recently made this transition. It's really my way of giving back to the community. We're helping, it's very different than what I was doing in my supply chain career, but we're helping formerly incarcerated young men and women get access to high quality jobs and education. In addition to that though, the Los Angeles Area Chamber of Commerce is involved in World Trade Week. That's something that we host every year. It's a major event. We get, I believe it's in the neighborhood of 1,000 to 2,000 guests to this event, people from all over the world. So it's a very large, high-profile event. Again, I'm currently in my role just really giving back to the community, trying to help underserved individuals. But I do plan to go back to the supply chain and logistics industry at some point in the future. And one thing I will say is that when I was your age sitting in some of these college courses, I had such a hard time choosing a major. So my first major was computer science. Then I went into communications, because I was leaning towards business, but I was scared of the math. So I was like, maybe not business, maybe I'll do something else. I had a real hard time, but in the end I chose business and just had to face the math, statistics and calculus and all this stuff. It was really tough for me to face it. Once I did, I found that it wasn't so bad. But I really do think it's a great path, and I think this program, PRO-GTL, is great for you guys, because you get to ask us, what's it like if I go down that path? Or what's it like if I go down this path? So you kind of get to poke around and ask people who have been doing it for a while some questions. So I would take advantage of that if you guys have any questions at the end. I started off at the very ground level, being a messenger for a small customs broker near LAX. I did everything from driving to the port in Long Beach, LA, driving to steamship lines, driving to the air freight terminals, so a lot of the TSA regulated facilities. Also working with customs directly, paying customs duties. Do most of you know what customs duties are and what the tariff schedule is by show of hands? Are you guys familiar with that? So I'm assuming most of you don't. It's actually kind of a niche skill where it's everything that comes into our country. A lot of the items you guys are wearing, like that Louis Vuitton handbag I see over there, all these different materials come in, right? And I'll give you a very good example of Louis Vuitton. They were bringing in finished bags at one point, and they found that they were paying 20% for a leather handbag made in Italy or made in France. Whereas they figured out if we can bring in the materials and bring it here, we can, and it's made in the US now, we can save quite a bit on tax. And they also save a lot of space on the air freight. So when you're loading an airplane, you're paying for space. So they're what they call weight or measure. So they'll look at the actual weight, but then they'll look at how much space it's taking up. So you'll pay more for a pillow than you would for, let's say, a pair of shoes that are being shipped because of the space it takes up. So Louis Vuitton used that to their advantage. It's one of their strategies. So a lot of the bags you see here, they're made here in San Dimas or Irwindale. So it's how companies leverage the international strategies and international supply chain manufacturing tactics for their advantage. So that helps them reduce cost, and they still control quality very heavily. So they'll ship back a finished bag from a production line, send it back to France, make sure it's on par with production controls and quality controls, and then once it's approved, they'll send it back and then they'll release it to the stores. So it's really interesting to see how those supply chains kind of morph and what they do based on duties and taxes and other challenges. I'm looking here at the list of things that we wanted to cover with you guys. One of them is like, what are some critical factors impacting the logistics and supply chain industry? One of them is tax. So a lot of you have seen the news with Donald Trump. They're imposing trade barriers and quotas and anti-dumping duties, countervailing duties. That means that from a certain country, if a U.S. Industry complains, and I say, you know what, you're in China and you're making the same product I'm making it in the US and it's costing me 30 bucks a piece. You're making it in China, it's costing me 10 bucks a piece. You're able to sell it for 20. There's no way I'm going to compete with you. You're going to take my company out of business unless I change. So they'll file a claim with the Department of Commerce. The Department of Commerce then investigates, they run this long case and then decide how much should I charge you on taxes to make it a level playing ground, a level playing field. So they'll charge you 20%, 30%, 100% on your imported goods to make it so that the consumer can still see kind of the comparable price versus just seeing such a cost savings on your product. So that's something that is affecting our supply chain and as a country, it's something that we're really concerned about, right? We want to obviously as consumers save money, but we also want to make sure that our U.S. economies are protected. So that's something that our government does. The other big factor is technology. E-commerce is playing a major role. And one example I'll give you there is even the middle class in China is rising so fast, and there's so much wealth being accumulated there that the middle class in China is consuming more than they ever have. So in the past, let's say 15 years ago, we would ship a lot of product from China into the U.S. Ship container loads and these mega steamships full of cargo and airplanes full of cargo into the U.S. They go back empty because they have to go back to get more. And so they go back empty and they sell that return flight at peanuts because it's like, I'll charge you whatever you're willing to pay, because either way it's going back empty. So now they're going back full because the Chinese consumers are buying finished goods and they prefer the goods that are made in the U.S. because of the perceived higher quality. especially when it comes to consumer goods, like if your baby milk formula, that sort of stuff. They know that the U.S. has very high food and drug standards, so they'll protect consumers much more than the products that are made and sold in Asia will. So a lot of the Chinese consumers are buying their protein powder, their baby's formula in the U.S. or in Europe to get a higher quality product. So it's incredible. And even some of the goods, they just feel like, oh, if it's sold here, it must be better quality than what I can buy here in Shanghai that's made here. So it's kind of an interest. Some of it's just perceived and not a true difference. Others are in terms of the quality control standards. So that's something that we're seeing that's impacting the industry quite a bit. And I think the other big skill, I think project management, I agree with you 100%. Project management is a huge skill. No matter if you're in a direct project manager role or if you're in a similar role, there's always some kind of project going on. Your college career is a project in many ways. You're already looking at, hey, 3 to 4 years out, what am I going to be doing? What's my plan? What do I got to do now to kind of be positioned for that next move I want to make in a couple years? Do I have to start applying? Do I have to start taking certain courses that I can transfer? So that's a project. You're already project managing, you just don't realize it. So once you get into the career of your choice, you know, be ready to bring that skill with you, because that's what employers really care about, is that attention to detail, attention to commitments, the time, the deliverables. If you say, hey, I'm committing to doing this by next week, you want to make sure you're getting it done by then or keeping other people accountable. So that's really an important skill. As far as programs go, I know Microsoft Project is a strong one. It's not one you see a whole lot, but it's one that I've used. I think is a great program. There's also Asana. It's not as complex of a program, but it is helpful just for reminding yourself of tasks. Asana's free, so that's something that you can kind of use to practice if you ever wanted to make a project management plan. And it's something that people that you deal with will take you more seriously when they see that you have a plan, a documented project plan. You're saying, here it is. This is my plan for when I want to get things done. And obviously meeting those deadlines that you set and how one will affect the other, that's really a good skill. The other skill is overcoming adversity. I think many of you you're in college at a time where things have changed competitively. I mean, the one good thing is that the unemployment rate is fairly low, so you're all at an advantage in terms of looking for career paths when you graduate. I think that's in your favor. But many other things are changing. So I think as you graduate, look at the adversity and the challenges to you and as a professional, young professional going into your career, what can you do to really create that value? I recommend internships too. If you can get into some type of internship. Boeing, I mean, if I would have known Boeing was paying for 100% of my tuition, I would have gone applied there many times until I got in, because that's huge. I mean, you think of just what student debt is doing to our country, right? In terms of so many people are graduating with student debt. If you can work for an employer that will pay your tuition, I mean, that's huge. So you can actually work while you're learning, and that's actually what I did. I got in at the ground level of logistics. Was always a night student, El Camino Community College. Then I transferred to Cal State Long Beach for my international business degree. I haven't got my master's yet. My philosophy on that is, if I work for a company that's willing to pay for my tuition, I will go get my master's. So that's kind of my position on that. But I've had the opportunity to get a lot of great experience over the years. Again, starting from the ground level and working my way up to different roles. DHL was the director of key account management, so I got to work with some really cool companies like your Starbucks, Louis Vuitton, or LVM, the whole LVMH family, which includes Louis Vuitton, Moet Hennessy, Fendi, all these other brands. We got to go to New York Fashion Week, host these really cool kind of receptions. A lot of travel, both to Europe and Asia, so it's something that I was very fortunate to experience. And I think many of you will be going down that path as well. So I wish you all well, and please ask questions at the end. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm with Glynn. I'm with an organization called Manufacturing Technology Consulting, known as CMTC, much easier. I actually work with manufacturers, and we work with manufacturers to help them typically to enhance their capabilities. And there's something like 600,000 jobs available right now. So there's a real need to involve people in manufacturing, and the logistics element is really important in that. I work with these companies specifically to get them to increase sales and access new customers in global markets. And there's a world of opportunity. As far as my background, I did start out in logistics. I worked with the airlines for 5 years. My undergraduate is in linguistics, worked the airlines for 5 years. One of the key benefits at that point was I got to travel the world, which was nice. Went back for my master's in international management, and then had planned to go back to working on the passenger side of the airlines, but ended up on the air freight side, which was a fabulous experience because it allowed me to work with a lot of different companies, small, large, deal with a lot of different problems. As you'll hear in the logistics, flexibility is absolutely important. Flexibility, paying attention, being attentive to what's going on. It was a great foundation, and then I went to work for, it was Fritz Companies, who's now part of, I believe, UPS. That was a customs house broker that wanted to expand into the transportation. They hired me for my air freight background, and of course, then I ended up managing the downtown Los Angeles, which is import and ocean. So, but to make a long story short, that experience that you gain in the transportation logistics field is incredibly important. It exposes you to a lot of diversity, a lot of problem solving, which is significant. From that point, I was actually recruited by one of my clients. It was a 10-person company, small company, but they hired me because of my transportation background. And we were, in the 2 years that I was with them, we tripled, just nearly tripled, went from 40 containers a year to just under triple that, just by my ability to understand the logistics and be able to deliver. So that is significant. And you can leverage that in not just the logistics field, the freight forwarding and the customs brokerage, but also with the manufacturers. And there's tremendous need for that. I've also worked for a defense contractor, okay? Export advisor for a defense contractor. And I'm here to tell you, I worked with a 10-person company and a $4 billion defense unit. It has nothing to do with how much money you have or how large you are. It's how you play the game. So that expertise becomes extremely valuable for whatever company that you work with. So that's important. As far as qualities, flexibility, learning, understanding culture, being patient, that's really critical. You mentioned shoes. It was interesting. I did a little consulting project for a company that in the logistics or the air and ocean, something as simple as shoes. A company sent, it was a major company, sent a sample of shoes. How much do you think of, a box of shoes or 2 boxes? They moved it. The export manager didn't care. He said, "Oh, exporting is too hard." He sent it. The buyer asked to have it sent via ocean, and they sent it ocean. Okay, and of course the buyer was furious because it took 28 to 38 days to get the product, and then they paid a fortune because in ocean versus air, and that's what you learn is, you mentioned the weights and measure. A small shipment, you're going to move it air because you can get it there in 3 to 5 days. In ocean, a small shipment, even though it's this size, you're going to pay for about the size of a washing machine. There are minimum quantities, so that understanding is important. And he couldn't understand why the buyer in Spanish was furious with this company. And it was a big company. It was a sophisticated company. So your knowledge on how to leverage those different options becomes critical for not only your capabilities, but also for the company you work with. The other thing I'll say is, once you understand the process and you understand that structure, this will never be boring for you because the global business environment is always diverse. So there's always going to be a little bit of flexibility. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I think that one of the things that I'll probably do is bounce off back and forth between the two of us, since we're both with TSA, we both work together, and he's been my boss for about 10 years now.
That's why.
She's very fortunate.
I'm blessed. So good morning, my name is Brandy Richards, and I'm a lead transportation security manager at Terminal 4. So what I do daily is I oversee the operations within Terminal 4 at LAX. So a little bit about my background is I come from 16 years of federal service so far. In next month, actually, it'll be 16 years in federal service. So before TSA, I actually was in the Marine Corps. So I spent 4 years in the Marine Corps and actually with a logistics background. So one of the things that I did was storage distribution of ammunition and explosives in the Marine Corps. So I come from a little bit of a background in that and was able to transfer that over to TSA, but one of the things that's kind of misunderstood with TSA is that the first impression you get from TSA is, oh, that person in uniform that's about to pat me down. Common misconception that that's the only thing we do is harass people at the airport. There are so many different career opportunities within TSA. There's so many different opportunities for individuals going into any kind of logistics field, HR field. We have every department available. And I see that part of the Global Trade and Logistics program is transportation management, supply chain management, and operations management. We absolutely have every one of those items covered in our career field. And I think one of the best things about being with TSA since I started in 2007 as a screener, yes, I was that person that was patting you down. So I actually started out as a TSO, a part-time TSO, and I had no idea the career opportunities within TSA. So that's one of the things that I focused on is developing every skill possible, and a lot of it had to do with operational management and overseeing the operation and developing every skill possible and taking on every opportunity as a TSO. And once I felt like I had established myself enough as far as getting familiarized with the operation, that's when I started to move up. And once I did start to move up, I moved up relatively fast because I gained that experience over that 2-year period. So I think that one of the biggest things that we focus on is transportation management, but also the emerging threat. So that changes the aspect of our equipment and our inventory, our logistics. It's constantly evolving. That's never going to stay stagnant. It's always going to be constantly emerging. We're always going to have to stay one step ahead with the technology, and that's a big aspect of our position. So another thing with my background, I actually have a bachelor's in psychology. So I kind of went a different direction with my bachelor's, but my master's, over the next couple of years, I'm going to be starting getting into my MBA. And contributing towards the continuous development of my management position here. So at that point, I will go ahead and hand it over to Mr. Duretto here, so he can kind of touch on some of the other aspects of his position at his level.
Overwhelming, everyone. So we didn't mean to overwhelm you with TSA today. That wasn't the intent. I just thought that this was a really cool idea that you all get to share in, and so I wanted to come be a part of it. And I too started with TSA in 2005 as a transportation security officer. So that's our uniform, that's the lowest level that you can enter the agency in. And currently I'm an assistant federal security director. So within 14 years, actually within 12 years, I advanced to my current position. And really some of the things I want to touch on today, I'll get into a little bit of the operations management and what we do. But for me, I always say this to every one of our new hire classes. I am not the smartest guy in the room, but it was just really dedication, focus, goals, and more importantly, I'm just getting involved in different things outside of my normal day-to-day job responsibilities. And that created so much opportunity for me, both personally and also in terms of my personal advancement, because when you start involving yourself in different aspects of whatever organization you all will end up with, that's when you really start to network, you really start to see other opportunities that in your current capacity you may not see. So I highly encourage you all to pursue that path once you get out there and you start finding your way. And it's kind of, I chuckle at myself because my background is very much disjointed. I got a Bachelor of Science in microbiology, so now I'm in transportation security, so figure that out. But after I got out of college, I also got into management, and then later on in life, I pursued my artistic side and tried to, I worked in the music industry for about 11 years, and then decided that was a little too unsteady for me, that I wanted something more reliable, which is why I went to the government, because I don't think, minus the furloughs, it's pretty solid. We do get paid. My day-to-day responsibilities, really, I oversee, there's two of me, so there's myself and I have a peer who's an assistant director as well. We oversee and maintain the integrity of the security operation, which encompasses many things. And when I look at, and that's pretty huge, because we're really a 24/7 operation. So this phone on my waist is my nemesis because it's with me 24/7 and I have to answer it 24/7. Because my primary goal is to ensure that nothing ever gets into what we call the sterile area of the airport, which is where people have been screened. We don't want a repeat of 9/11, so everything about us is to ensure that that never happens again. But little do you all know that we're not just people that take your toothpaste and lotion and shampoo. Brandy covered the pat downs, I covered the taking away of items, which, by the way, we call voluntarily surrendering. You want to clarify that. But for TSA, we have, so we have a finance department, we have an HR department, we have logistics, we have legal, we have scheduling. So many of these things that are on the curriculum here, we offer, and I think that's probably true with every federal agency. So I think what I'd like to convey to you all today is most people probably see TSA as being one-dimensional. We're the people at the airport that screen passengers and do all these nasty things and yell at people. But we're much bigger than that, and I think every federal agency is, and so once you get your foot in the door, there's many, many opportunities that you all can pursue. And most, I don't want to say most, but a lot of our officers enter TSA to get their foot into the federal system, and then from there, many of them go on to different careers with different agencies. CBP is probably the most prevalent in terms of where a lot of our officers go because they have a large footprint at the airport as well. But that's just kind of my words of wisdom to you all. I'd say with anything that I've learned in life, it's just really setting those goals, pursuing them. Elizabeth mentioned flexibility. That's huge because we have shifts. Who's a morning person in here? Raise your hand. And who's not? Let's do that. So this is what I tell our new hires, because really you enter an agency or whatever capacity you go out there and you venture into, you've got to be flexible, because you're not going to find the perfect situation to walk into that's going to absolutely enhance your entire life. We have officers that will start shifts at 3 in the morning and they're night people. They can't get up, but they have to. They have to be flexible. So I always tell them everything in life is temporary, things will change. So if you find yourself in one of those situations, you just make the best of it, be flexible, move forward, and eventually you'll get to that place of where you want to get to. So kudos to you all for coming and listening to this. Hopefully you get some really valuable information today, and I'll pass it on.
Thank you, Mike.
Yes, and I'm a retired Boeing executive. I worked at Boeing not that long because I worked at Hughes and we were sold to Boeing's, and I was actually longer a Hughes employee than I was a Boeing employee. I think I might be here for a little different reason than the folks that have talked before, because my specialty is definitely not logistics, although I do know enough about logistics to know it's extremely difficult and very complicated. But, you know, you don't think of it as being quite as hard. You know, all you're trying to do is get some stuff someplace, but it turns out really, really complicated. So I want to give you a little bit of background on my thoughts here. I grew up on a dirt farm in the middle of Oklahoma. I went to public schools. The farm I grew up on, the bathroom was, well, there. It was hot and smelly in the summer and cold and really frigid in the winter. And when I retired Boeing executive. So I want to encourage all of you. I expect a lot of you are working your way through college. That's what I did. I had a job that paid. Now, if you live on a farm, you have a job from the time you can walk, but they don't pay you very well. But I started working at 16 and worked ever since. Worked my way through college. I ended up with a PhD in math when I graduated. When I finally finished, went to work for the Aerospace Corporation here in not here in El Segundo, but down there in El Segundo, and started my career as an analyst. I was doing mathematical modeling for the Aerospace Corporation, and that was really my only interception with logistics. I was doing mathematical modeling of logistics problems, and one of the problems I worked on was the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, and trying to understand when would things break and how many should you order and what, you know, I mean, you can understand how a strategic petroleum reserve whose goal is to pump out oil in case there's a national catastrophe and we don't have oil available, it's got to work. So you need parts available, but you can't afford all the parts in the world, so how many do you need, and what are they, and those sort of things, and the logistics associated with those kind of things. And so my career, I tell people my whole life has just been random. I just randomly went to graduate school. I randomly ended up with a PhD in math. I randomly ended up in Los Angeles because, as you probably remember a minute ago, I told you I grew up in the middle of Oklahoma. So I ended up at the Aerospace Corporation, and then I went to work for Hughes. And then Hughes, I probably, like most everyone here, you begin to get, first you're kind of a team leader, so it's you and 2 or 3 other people who are working a project and trying to get it done. And then you get more responsibility, and you end up with a project lead, and then you end up as program manager, and then they, you know, work hard, and you keep getting more and more responsibility until you're up working very complex, multi-hundreds of millions of dollars worth of work and managing a lot of stuff. I don't know everything that you guys are studying, but I echo, or would like to echo, what a number of the folks have said here. A lot of it's hard work. The other thing is, life is an adventure. You don't know what's going to happen in your life, and you have to roll with the punches. And sometimes bad things happen, and you've got to recover from those. Sometimes terrific things happen, and you have to grab it. When you get the opportunity for something great, grab hold of it. If you're afraid of something, figure out how you can get over being afraid of it. Because you got to step in there and take on stuff that is terrifying. Frankly, very, very scary. So I think with that, maybe we should open it up for questions, if anyone has questions, and I'll turn here.
Okay, thank you. She's very humble. She's for the first female project managers in a large program that you and I can't even talk about. And way before, you know, women's rights, #2, she was the original. She was the original. She's humble. Okay.